I'm Zhen. I'm a freelance graphic designer and illustrator currently designing at the Whitworth Art Gallery in Manchester, and this is Lepas Sekolah.
Zhen, I came to know of you thanks to an exhibition that you curated back in June. I figured that'd be a great place to start this interview. Could you tell us what that exhibition was about?
Yes, so thank you. I did do an exhibition back in June on the 16th and the 17th at San Juan Gallery, Northern Quarter, Manchester. It's called I'm Glad You're Here, and it's an art exhibition that doubles as a farewell gathering because essentially my visa's coming to an end, which you'll hear more about later in a bit. And I just wanted a space and a time where I could gather everyone and all of my friends who have impacted me and who I've met throughout my journey in the UK. I used a lot of techniques such as like remixing and collaging, sourcing materials from my friends and making them into special like cards and like creative art. Also just collecting ephemera and then creating this space, the gallery, into a celebration of friendship and reflecting the relationships we have with each other. So that's it. Yeah, if there's more you want to know about, it's on my Instagram, which I pretty much explained it more articulately, I think.
That must be a milestone for any artist. Tell me, have you always known you wanted to commit yourself to art?
I've never really wanted to commit myself to art more so than I just fell into the art of making and creating and it just never stopped.
Where did you attend high school?
So I attended high school in Nobel International School.
Was there a particular reason you chose that school?
It was less so I chose Nobel International School than my parents chose it. So I was 13. It's not much you can do. I think my parents chose it because it was very much within the price range that they could afford at that time. And also the education system was very much stricter, I think. And that was something they were looking for me to still explore an international education system, English education system, but also retaining Asian values, like more stricter values. Yeah.
And I understand that you did IGCSE. Were there any art related subjects that you took? Did you feel like that bolstered your love for art?
Yes, I did take art and design in IGCSE. It did bolster my love for art, understanding the process of research, primary research, secondary research, and then sketching, and then rendering, and then refining. Like the whole process very much I fell in love with, but I feel like I only fell in love with because I had great teachers to guide me through the process. If I was just left alone, I don't think I would have loved it as much.
And how did you end up doing for IGCSE?
So I took 10 subjects. I did 9 A stars and 1 A.
Did you receive a scholarship after IGCSE?
No.
So Zen, talk to me about what your plans were after completing your IGCSEs.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was actually deciding between computer science, because at that time it was more secure. And then on the other hand, I was also thinking about graphic design because during secondary school, my tutor brought us to the One Academy and kind of like looked around, and I thought it was a really cool thing that they had graphic design. Throughout secondary school, I was doing graphic design actually, but without knowing that it was graphic design. I was making these like graphics for shows and for fandoms that I really enjoyed. And I was surprised to see that people actually could make a living from it. Back to after graduation, after IGCSE, I had computer science on one side and graphic design on one side. And I wrote out the pros and cons. And I was like, let's do graphic design. I feel like I'll have more fulfillment through my research. And so I just went to the One Academy, just dropped in, same day, signed up for their diploma in advertising and graphic design. And I continued on.
What is the structure of a diploma and how is it different from pathways such as A levels or IB?
Well, I can only speak to the diploma that I took. It's more task-based and structured, kind of like a foundation. So for my diploma in the One Academy, we had 3 semesters a year and it's throughout 3 years. So one semester you'll have different blocks of subjects that you take ranging from still life, painting, and then slowly graduating into photography and then branding design, packaging design, book design. It's very much task-based. There's not a lot of essays or writings. And I think I only took 2 exams, which was required by the government, the BKA exam and also an English exam.
What were some of your favorite modules at the One Academy?
So at the start, I really enjoyed color theory and still life painting. It granted me a block within my really hectic schedule, a block of 4 hours just to sit down, listen to music, listen to podcasts, and just paint. I'm blessed that my painting skills were acceptable by the tutor, so they just left me be and I could just enjoy and have a break.
And was there a final year project that you had to do?
Yes, so a final year, in terms of a final year project, the final semester in your final year, you kind of have to juggle a few big projects. This is where it gets a bit interesting because I did it during COVID, and you're supposed to team up together with your whole class and plan your graduation exhibition, your degree show from start to finish. Because it was during COVID, our team had to just do it online, and that posed really interesting challenges through communication and planning and materializing what was supposed to be a physical degree show into a website, which was still very new to both tutors and students alike. That's one of the big projects, I would say.
And just a tangent off what you just said, I feel like most people, when they think about artists in general, they think about these individual workers. Would you then say, based on everything you've just mentioned, that art can also be a very collaborative form of, well, art sometimes?
I think art inherently is quite collaborative. There's this myth of the lone genius or the lone author, but that's not true because they're inspired by everything. You can't create in a vacuum, and that's something I very much appreciate and explore in my practice, which is the relationships and being critical of what I'm interacting with and who I'm interacting with.
Would you recommend the One Academy for students who might be looking to dip their toes into the art pool?
So, I would not actually recommend the One Academy for students just looking to dip their toes into the art pool because it's such a rigorous and intensive course throughout 3 years. You really have to dedicate your life. And not just that, the One Academy, just to be transparent, is considered one of the more expensive art schools. So even deferment, you'll have to consider the cost incurred through that. There's a video on YouTube by Gabby Caldera that the title is quite clickbaity. It says, "Do not go to art school." However, if you do watch the video, it gives advice and gives tips and kind of conditions on people who should go to art school and should not go to art school, which I very much think reflects the experience in the One Academy, where if you're not mentally strong, it's something that people don't really say because you do break down a lot. It's very much overwhelming. I would say, however, I would recommend the One Academy if you are able to do the work and you are able to commit to the fees to go for it, because I came out with a ton of skill that I would not have been able to do it alone, and also a ton of good friends who have up till now still support my creative practice and I support their creative practice, and that's just a really great investment, I think, or just a really great time.
And for the sake of an honest discussion, Asian parents tend to frown upon their children pursuing arts, commonly citing low salary as a reason. Have your parents always been supportive of your decisions and dreams?
So my mom's always been quite supportive. I think she believes that anything that you put your mind to, you will succeed, and she's applied that to me. And my dad was kind of skeptical, as the reasons that you mentioned. However, in the end, he kind of conceded with my mom as well, saying that, okay, if you do put your mind to it, you will be able to succeed. It helps to kind of explain what graphic design is because it's not well known within the arts itself and also within Asian parents because it's such a new discipline. But explaining that, oh, this packaging is actually graphic design, this like poster is actually graphic design, and like when they want to see graphic design everywhere, they'd be like, oh, okay, someone's doing this. So yeah, they were less concerned and more happy for me to do my thing.
So, after you completed your diploma, did you continue to study art?
As previously mentioned, I graduated during COVID, and I knew I wanted to pursue my studies overseas if it did come to that. So those two things, those two situations did not match up at all. What I did after was work for a Malaysian souvenir brand called Binka KL. I actually freelanced for them during my the One Academy diploma years. So to transition from that was quite a blessing to have the opportunity. Throughout COVID, I worked for them, and until it was the kind of end of COVID, there's no end of COVID, but when restrictions were lifted, I decided then to pursue my studies.
And you ended up pursuing a Bachelor of Arts degree in graphic design at the University of the West of England. Why the UK?
The One Academy actually has affiliate universities with different universities from the US, UK, New Zealand, and Australia, I believe. So looking through that list, it was a process of elimination, to be honest. Like, I didn't want to be in the US. Australia, people say that, well, number one, living costs are high. And number two, it was a lot of Malaysians. And also, at that time, the information given to me was that racism was more prevalent in Australia. And then for New Zealand, people told me that nothing was there. So I'm so sorry. I know it's stunning. I've never been, but I didn't want to study in a place where there was nothing. So then it came down just to the UK. And there were a lot of UK universities to choose from, the affiliate list that the One Academy provided.
And I understand there are different art degrees that you could go into, like advertising, art history, animation, etc. What helped you firm your decision that it's going to be graphic design?
Going back, my diploma was advertising and graphic design. And I really did not enjoy the advertising part. It really was the bane of my existence. I think being able to push through and finish that diploma was because of the graphic design and because of my friends. And then I felt that the graphic design course in the One Academy gave me so much like technical skills and being able to start a project and finish a project. But I was looking at these graphic designers or people who do work that are graphic design online, and it was this amazing thing that they were inputting like theory and also people like community and stuff, and I could not grasp it with the knowledge and the skill set that I had. So I recognized there was this gap in between the graphic design and the concept of graphic design and what a graphic designer can become. So because of that, I wanted to further pursue graphic design at a higher education level.
And was applying for an art degree any different from the usual UCAS application process? Did you have to submit a portfolio or anything of the sort?
So if you do go through normal channels, you do apply as UCAS normally. However, as I mentioned, that the university that I chose was affiliated with the One Academy. So I just had to approach the student services at the One Academy, and then they helped me throughout my whole process just applying, and they were very friendly and very much communicative. Because also of that, I did not have to submit an art portfolio. I did, however, had to submit a personal statement.
If you were to give one piece of advice for people who might have to submit an art portfolio, what would it be?
I would say focus on your process. They want to look at your thinking and focus on range of work. You're there to like learn different things, and if you just show like one specific style or technique, they're not sure if you're able to possess that curiosity of learning.
And was your degree what you expected it to be?
Yeah.
How was your experience at the University of the West of England?
Really good. I learned so many things throughout so many different aspects, not just learning as a student, but also observing how the tutors teach. It was so interesting because I've not had any interactions with teachers like that ever, where they were understanding, where they held empathy, where they were also practicing graphic designers or artists themselves. And to me, that was very eye opening.
How did you find Bristol as a city?
Aw, Bristol was great. Bristol's so nice, guys. If you ever have a chance, please visit Bristol. It's very hilly, but it's also very green. There's a lot of youthful energy. Music's great. And you know, when you're vibing with your friends, Bristol's a great city to be.
Did you get up to anything else outside of academics?
So I work part-time jobs basically. I worked at a Chinese restaurant and then also a Japanese restaurant. To me, that really enriched my university life as well, both in terms of my disposable money and also being able to interact with people professionally as a server. You get to see more of what the city is like, more of what the people in the country are like, what their concerns are of the country, what they're happy about.
Two related questions. What inspires your art and how do you stay inspired?
This is actually a question that I think about a lot, and it might be a very mundane and boring answer because to me, nothing grand has ever inspired my work. It's always the people around me, my parents, my friends, my partner, the nature and the immediate space that I'm in, like right now. That's always pushed me forward. I'm always more motivated by being able to see what is immediate around me. I feel like I've only got so much energy and power and influence to commit myself to people who know me and also make me know them.
Your previous responses might have already alluded to the answer to this coming question, but just to satisfy a personal curiosity of mine, do you think the artist can be separated from the art?
Ooh, the age-old classic question. The short answer is no. The long answer, however, is that I think that sometimes people ask that question when they're actually thinking if they should ask, can the reader be separated from the art? Okay, I've actually got notes on my phone for this, so I'll just have my phone in this shot. I think that if a piece of art made you happy, then let it bring you joy. And if it saved you during a moment of time, then let it save you. However, when an artist proclaims something to be their life's work, how do you separate the life from the work? And if the work sustains an artist's life to enable them to do something, be it positive or negative, how do you separate that life from their work? That's like my personal take on it. And it's such a nuanced case by case thing. So, which it always comes up to yourself to be critical, to think about it. Nobody is perfect, so art shouldn't be. Art always comes from pain and like tragedy and suffering, which is an oldest form of communication. So it's not about dismissing and also creating this demarcation and barrier from the art and the artist, but just thinking about how your impact and how you consuming the work is affecting you and affecting other people. Because to be thoughtful of the art you consume is to create a world for yourself, and is to have agency in how you interact and see the world. I think that this separation of art and artists in culture actually creates this alienation of labor where the finished product has no consideration of the artist, where the artist's body becomes the machine, and so people might think that it's okay to replace artists with machines, as we see with a lot of AI and stuff. So back to my personal take, I think that understanding the context of how a work was made and applying that into the work changes the work and enriches the work. And to me, that's what I find art interesting.
That might just be the best answer I've ever heard to this question. Definitely need time to digest that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your undergraduate
Yes.
degree still.
Let's go back.
What are some skills you've cultivated over your education that are quite niche or specific to art?
I had to think about this question, and I don't think that's anything actually niche or special that I've learned. I think art is such a transferable skill, or at least the art that I think about. Obviously, there's technical skills like actually drafting and drawing and playing with the material and like the software that you use, from like Adobe to Affinity to Procreate. But all these, I would not say it's niche. It's like how each industry or each career has their own ways of doing and ways of making.
Did you take on any internships throughout your undergraduate degree?
Yes, so I did a short internship with Supple Studio in Bath, and that was under this program that the West of England designers kind of have, where they match university students with existing practicing studios. And that was a great experience. So I've got a second internship that I did kind of in my final year, which was under this internship program for people of color and like marginalized people called Strive. So I did a digital and user research internship with Bristol Museum's Art Gallery. It was nothing related to graphic design. However, it did kind of inform a lot of my thinking and how I approach people. So what I did in the internship was I had to do user research where I had to approach people in the space, in the gallery space, and ask them questions on the gallery and their thoughts regarding this space that we were targeting, which is the old taxidermy space in Bristol Galleries. So we were talking about colonization and repatriation, and it was so interesting to hear different kinds of responses from young people to old people. Going back on how that informed my design work, it really just showed me that everything's connected and that there's different ways of conducting research that's not just on the screen and like looking at mood boards, which is important, but it shouldn't be the only thing. Like you can just talk to people for research, and that's been really helpful.
How would you say the teaching methods differ between Malaysia and the UK?
I can only speak to different levels of education because in Malaysia I did diploma and in the UK I did a degree. So those two levels of education are not directly comparable. I would say generally that Malaysian education, at least what I experience, is kind of stereotypical of what you would read and like listen from peers and friends, where it's go go go. The end product is the most important thing ever. It's like the most nebulous thing that you'll ever do. Like there's no life after that. And critiques are very harsh because of that. They only look at the end product, and as I said again, they don't think about the people making the end product. So they feel justified to critique them really harshly. I would even say that's proper critique, but rather judgment. That's kind of the Malaysian side. And for the UK side, there is a note that because it's a degree, you are expected to be more self-led and self-independent in your studies. So the tutors are not very hands-on. So you really have to push into chasing what you want and asking what you want. And in comparison to, let's say, a Malaysian teaching where the tutor kind of lets you know what to do next and you just follow instructions, the UK side is very much introspective, where tutor sessions are just the tutor asking you questions like, oh, what can you make better? Or what do you feel about making this? Where do you think your project can go? Kind of like a therapy session. To transition from an education environment where you keep getting told to do stuff to something where you have to give yourself agency to create the work may not be the smoothest transition for a lot of people, but I would say that's the biggest change and biggest like difference between the education.
Would you say that the Brits and Malaysians both have very different ways of looking at and interpreting art?
Yes, for sure there's a difference. And there's so many ways that I could answer this question, and there's so many ways other people can answer this question. What I will say directly is the UK as a country is so much more mature and older. Malaysia is such a young country, and that for sure influences the art and influences the way that we interact with art. I feel like people in the UK, they have a lot of interactions with politics at the start. They're very much able to speak about politics. You get political posters on the streets, while Malaysians are very much, for obvious reasons and many reasons, a bit more reluctant to discuss that in public. And that has a bearing on how people interpret and look at art as well, and how they would interact with art. The UK also has a huge museum culture, so a lot of the museums are free. I think there are like almost 2,500 museums in the UK, which is insane. And so they're very much okay with the idea of being around art and learning about art and growing up around art. Obviously, there are also people that just don't care about art. It's just not part of their thing because there is class involved as well. If you're working class and if you're struggling, you won't think about art as much. And that applies both to the UK and Malaysia. Malaysians, I would say, an interesting point is so far, I'm saying like speaking generally, where they're quite concerned on the technique and the finesse of an art piece, which is also very important. It's not to dismiss one or the other, but they're very much more wowed by things that are more technical and more detailed. In comparison to sometimes in the UK, it might be just a block of square. And you'll be like, what is that? But the thinking behind it is what motivates it and what people look after more.
Did you know what your career path was going to look like before you graduated university?
So I knew I wanted to take the graduate visa, which is why I also worked part-time jobs throughout my university to save up for the visa. And after that, I just wanted to explore different career options, be it like in-house or be it in agencies or studios designing. But that's quite difficult, is what from my experience has shown. Going back to why the graduate visa, at that time, it was an amount that was savable through working part-time jobs. It has increased now, which I think is quite expensive. I did want to go back home to work after the graduate visa. I just didn't know how long my time in the UK would be. I knew I didn't want to settle in the UK. Like, this was agreed between me and my partner that we both wanted to go back to Malaysia in the end. So, yeah.
And you mentioned previously that you're a freelancer, and I know that freelancing means your work isn't routine and subsequently your income might not be routine either. Has this posed any challenges to you? Did you feel like you had to carry the weight of putting yourself out there and your work out there to attract clients?
Yes, as every freelancer will tell you, it's not an easy route. And the interesting thing is, I did not intentionally set out to become freelance. I was going through the laborious and scary process of job hunting, and it's been quite challenging to find a proper job. So I did get a junior graphic design job in house that I got laid off from after 9 months. And then it was quite hard to find other jobs. But in between that, like through word of recommendation and word of mouth, I came to get more and more design jobs, and that's how I kind of just sustained myself, obviously not consistently. That was supplemented by my job at a Malaysian restaurant. So I did part-time Malaysian restaurant, and in my free time I worked on my portfolio. I worked on freelance jobs that came to me. That's just how I came to start freelancing. And then through word of mouth again, I got a contract with the Whitworth where I am now. As long as you're making things just happen.
I want to quickly tangent here and talk about your art style. How did you come to develop that, and at which point of your journey did that style solidify?
That's a really funny question because I don't think I have an art style, or at least my art style changes, because I do believe that an art style is how you interact with the world and what you see and what you absorb and what you put out on the paper. And it's not something that someone has to chase to achieve, like, oh, I want to have an art style. I don't think that's a healthy goal to have as well, because then you get quite limited by wanting to have the style that you dismiss exploring different styles and exploring what's good to you. If you see any artists as well, they have different periods of art or different eras, as you would say. And that obviously always changes with whether they're in art school, whether they graduated from art school, whether they stopped doing art professionally or as a hobby, or like you can see like a point where they're influenced by something. The style always changes. What people actually think about is the narrative and the story and your core and how you present the work, and that actually becomes the style. That's such a non-answer, and I feel like that's quite cheeky to say, but yeah.
And earlier you mentioned that you're now working with the Whitworth Art Gallery. What does your job entail?
My job at the Whitworth Art Gallery entails internal communications. I do graphic design for their invites, for their internal flyers and posters and banners, promotional marketing, stuff you see on social media, stuff you see around the gallery, so like signages and stuff like that. It's been great, and also communications in between. Whatever the marketing team wants visually, I will come and help supplement it.
Is Manchester a lot different compared to Bristol?
Yeah, there is a huge difference between Manchester and Bristol. And people always ask me which one I like more. And I would give them a non answer where I say that it's really hard to compare the both because they both offer different things. And I came to them in different parts of my life. So they both are very dear to me. Manchester is obviously more metropolitan. You've got high-rise buildings, which Bristol doesn't have. You've got more people. You've got more robust, and that just leads to more robust like creative scene and stuff like that. Not to say Bristol doesn't have any, but if you like laid back small towns, if you want a more like closer tight knit community, I would say then maybe Bristol has that more. But I also found close tight knit communities in Manchester. and a creative scene that supports other people, supports each other.
And sadly, your 2 years on the graduate visa is coming to an end. Would you say it was a good investment?
I would say yes, it is. I had so many great memories in the UK throughout my grad visa. I think moving from Bristol to Manchester helped a lot as well. It kind of gave a point of change and really pushed me to explore different things and meeting new people, creating new friendships. And so I am headed home after my graduate visa. It kind of excites me that I don't have a solid plan, kind of. So I'm giving myself the end remaining of 2025 to explore different things, reconfigure myself, rethink about my practice as a graphic designer, as an illustrator, as an artist, and also just exploring the city again because so much has changed in the 3 years. Like just through Instagram and through my friends, like texts and comments alone, the creative scene is booming in KL, at least, or in like Klang Valley. And I really want to just explore that and be in the moment.
And circling back to a point I made earlier about art being often frowned upon back home, do you think Malaysia does enough to support its artists and creatives, especially with the context that you just mentioned, that the art scene is starting to boom again?
I would say, as the information that I have right now, I would say that it is inching towards improvement, but not a lot is being done to support. When I mentioned that the art scene is booming, all of it is grassroots and all of it is just people wanting to see more things happening rather than the government of Malaysia trying to support. They do have different initiatives to help artists, but there's just not enough governmental funding and not enough fair governmental funding to support that. And obviously, there's also the recent controversy where the Malaysian pavilion in the Osaka Expo was not properly credited or not properly compensated for the artists. And there are these kind of bits and pieces still that require improvement and require people, the Malaysian people, to speak out on, to support artists. Yeah, there's also a favorable use of AI in governmental positions or in governmental messages and graphics, which I always see there's backlash from in comments, which kind of tells me that there's like a difference between the support of the people that really wants like artists to thrive and really see art as important to them. But then I guess obviously for a lot of reasons, the government doesn't really support that yet. And I just hope that just more people get to champion creatives and champion the art scene in Malaysia.
What is a career milestone you're hoping to achieve within the next 5 years?
I know this is supposed to be professional, but I don't know. I am at that point of life, I'm at that age and at that stage of life where I'm just open to everything. My tutor in UW Bristol in my final year feedback session said that there is so much life out there other than graphic design, and I hope you get to live it. So that's something that I want to embody and I want to explore. And slowly embodying that advice has really made my practice much more robust and much more exciting.
And lastly, in 3 words, could you describe your education journey Lepas Sekolah?
Enriching, explorative, and loving. I am Zhen, and this is my education journey, Lepas Sekolah.